Sexual harassment allegations involving the biggest names in media and Hollywood now has local businesses wondering if they have the right policies in place to protect staff. We are joined now by Alex Lucifero of Samfiru, Tumarkin. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. You're a labor and employment lawyer and, as I understand, fielding quite a few calls in recent weeks. Tell us about this.
We have been seeing an increase in calls, Annette, specifically from employers looking to update their policies and put those policies into action. Some of those employers may be a little late. There have been some changes to the legislation over the past year or so. Changes should have been made already, but certainly we're seeing those calls increase over the past couple of months, as well as calls from employees who are dealing with harassment in the workplace, want to know what their rights are, want to know what options they have. And certainly the news in the States, as well as some changes to the legislation, have caused an increase in those calls.
Here locally, we've had a local case we've reported on, and we've been talking about the Lauer case, the Harvey Weinstein case. I mean, there's big names in Hollywood and the media, but this goes back to Giangomeshi. So we're talking well over a year ago. This for you guys, as far as how companies are coming forward and looking to make sure that they have their T's dotted and their I's dotted and their T's crossed when it comes to their policies.
Absolutely, and around that time, so back in 2016, there were also changes to the Ontario Health and Safety Act that called for more vigorous investigations into allegations of harassment, very specific requirements from employers, and so since then we've seen those calls coming in. Employers have to have policies dealing with anti-sexual harassment. And quite frankly, not only policies, but they have to have procedures and specific actions in place for responding to allegations of sexual harassment.
So what kind of advice would you give employers then for what exactly they need for a policy?
Good question. I mean, the Ministry of Labour and again the Health and Safety Act in Ontario has specific requirements for anti-sexual harassment policies. Okay. There are certain bare bones requirements. For example, you have to know who is going to be performing the investigation. You have to confirm that the investigator will be independent, preferably a third-party expert in workplace investigations has to be doing this investigation. Really, the policy absolutely has to set out the rights, the roles, and the responsibilities of all parties involved. That includes the employer, includes the complainant, and includes the individual being accused of sexual harassment.
What about employees? What kind of rights do employees have? And what course of action should they take should they feel that they've been a victim of a case of sexual harassment?
Well, the two most important things I would say when it comes to what employees should do when they're dealing with harassment in the workplace is documentation and advising your employer immediately of the situation.
Okay.
If you don't do either of those two things as an employee, you risk either not being heard or your version of events in your story not coming across as accurately as you maybe want it. The last thing I would add, and certainly not because I'm an employment lawyer, but the last thing I would add for employees is that they get legal advice in situations like that. There are ways to extract employees from poisoned work environments, and certainly legal advice in a situation like that is absolutely crucial.
And the documenting part of it is because as time goes by, your memory of the events could shift. You could forget things. So immediately writing things down and dating it so that you have evidence. You have some kind of proof of your own memory.
It's simply a question of evidence. So, for example, like you just said, writing things down, documenting events as they happen. If there were witnesses to a particular event, getting those witnesses' statements and side of the story, and again, the second part of it, and probably equally as important as documentation, is advising your employer of the situation. Employers have an obligation to respond, absolutely, but it does become difficult to respond when they don't know what's happening in the workplace.
All right, fair enough. Okay, Alex, thank you very much. Some very good information on
My
a
pleasure,
very timely topic.